Word up.
Yo, Longhairs. Welcome to episode 110 of Let It Ride. Here we talk long hair and business, advocate for hair equality, and celebrate men's long manes with hair whips and high fives. If you're a guy with long hair, you're in the right place. I'm El Rubio. I am here at the Longhairs warehouse in the lounge with El Sicario and El Garvinsky. And hailing from Cottonwood, California, our returning guest on today's episode is the radical rider of BMX bicycles, a professional purveyor of bunny hops, big airs, and stalled out manuals. You may have seen him recently flying directly over mine and El Moreno's mains on Instagram. He's one of the big winners of our epic 2020 Community Hair Tie Design Contest and has been a loyal ambassador for the Longhairs for nigh on 3 years. He's one of the most genuine and authentic men we know. He is the one, the only, Ratty Maty! Woo!
Yo, what's up, man?
With the big intro.
Nice.
Look at that beauty.
Beautiful bike.
We're going to have you tell us a little bit more about that, but welcome back to Let It Ride.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here. So I looked back from our last time, our first blog post, and it was 2019 when I happened upon you at Adams Avenue Bicycles in San Diego. Since then, you've been on our podcast, part of several photo shoots, and you even designed the Bike Life hair ties for guys.
Woo!
Things have changed, though. You're looking a little different from the last time we saw you. And late last year, you reached out to me with an earnest message. It was time for a reset. So tell us, what was going on and what has happened?
Oh, man. Yeah.
You look great, by the way, as
Thank
a
you.
short hair, I got to say.
It needs a little bit of a trim. But, yeah, I reached out to you because, man, I was like legitimately losing hair. And I'd been diagnosed with Crohn's disease in July, had no idea what was going on. Things started feeling good. And with my recovery, I started gaining weight back. I lost a ton of weight, got really thin and all this stuff. And during that time, I started to brush my hair after I would shampoo and condition and noticed that it was getting more and more thin, more and more product or hair was coming out in my hands. I was like, this is so nuts. So I reached out to you because I needed to donate it. And it was just time to restart. You know, my body had gone through some pretty serious stuff, and I started feeling really good, started coming back out of this darkness that kind of came at me, and I was a little nervous to cut it off, not gonna lie. I do still miss it. But it feels good. I feel good. You know, you have to kind of go through some crazy moments in order to really appreciate stuff. So I'm appreciative that I'm still here. And if that needed to happen with hair loss, that's okay.
Nice.
Wow. So just take us through it a little bit more. You said Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
And it was in July.
Yeah. So it was. I'm probably breaking the microphones. I'm sorry. I move around a lot. That's how this is going to be.
Hey, get comfy.
Yeah. I'm trying to get.
And stay comfy.
Yeah. So, yeah, just, I mean, I guess you guys have already heard it, but I'll tell it to the listeners out there.
Please.
I was just doing a full-time delivery coffee job local here to San Diego and started having, you know, a little TMI warning, started having diarrhea 2 days after I got my first vaccine dose. So I just assumed, oh, it's a vaccine immuno thing, like my immune system just kind of needs to go through it. It's all good. Well, 2 weeks after having consistent diarrhea, I got a little nervous. And then a month after, I went to like a minute clinic at CVS. She listened to me with a little stethoscope, said, hey, if this is continuing, you should probably go get this checked out. This could be kind of serious. And it felt a little bit better, but man, I just had like weird gut feelings. And, you know, I really enjoy operating off of very little food. So that didn't help. I didn't have anything for my body to be like running off of. And I figured I could do it. Oh, it's intermittent fasting. You know, everyone's doing intermittent fasting. And I was doing it, but probably pretty severely incorrectly is what I'm guessing. It got to a point where after 2 months, I started vomiting and having diarrhea at the same time. So I kind of just looked at myself in the mirror and was like, I have to go to the hospital. Like, I legitimately felt like this is the stages of dying. And I was so thin. I'm about 200 pounds now. I was like 160 then, and it didn't look right. You know, like I went from like the peak of my issues. I looked like, no offense to Pilates, I looked like a 70-year-old Pilates instructor because my butt was gone. Like I didn't have a butt. It just kind of folded onto the hamstring. I didn't have my biker booty, like the voluptuous butt that we get from riding bikes. You know what I mean?
Pay for.
Like, you know, like that's one thing. I really enjoy my assets and I enjoy my butt. So like, where did it go? And that really threw me for a loop. I'd hang my leg up and I could see my calf muscle in the weird way, like it was thinner and all this stuff. So yeah, I went into the hospital, got a camera shoved up my butt, nicknamed colonoscopy, I guess is what they nickname it in there, and severe ulcers in my transverse colon. So upwards of potentially 2 years was some of the most severe ones, and maybe the more recent ones, maybe 6 months at that point. So it was very scary. And when the doctor said, you have Crohn's disease, I mean, in all reality, I just broke down and started crying because it's like, yeah, I immediately thought of my ego got destroyed. My hopes and dreams for riding bikes just went away. You know, I broke down right there and just lost it and was like, oh, sweet, I'm never going to be the same. I used to massage a client years ago, probably like almost over 10 years ago, who had Crohn's disease. And she was always in pain. And it devastated me. She is, sorry, I don't mean to talk to her in the past tense. She's still alive and kicking. But she embodied such a joy based on the pain that she told me she experienced on a daily level. I mean, on an hourly level even. You know, all of her joint pain is a really big thing. And so that's just, I flashed her experience into my mind when I heard the diagnosis, and it was devastating, you know, but.
So what is, not everyone knows, or it's not talked about often. Tell us just, what is Crohn's disease?
So
and how does it
I
affect your
don't
body?
have like an actual specific definition because I got really heavy into it and then I just gave up and was like, whatever. Basically, it's an autoimmune disease. It's very similar to ulcerative colitis, which is UC. Those are pretty similar. UC, I want to say, is a little broader. It can happen all the way up to the esophagus, down to the anus. And then Crohn's is a little more common in the colon region to, like, I don't think it goes outside of the colon, but I think it's just more specific locale. And so since I had such a heavy dose of ulcers in the colon area, they were like, yeah, this is Crohn's. Crohn's is an autoimmune disease. How I think it started, the lack of food in my stomach and the amount of coffee that I was drinking. Not saying that I was drinking absurd amounts of coffee, but I was pretty much only drinking coffee during the day, not really eating a lot of food.
Without the food.
At all, yeah. And I was doing the bulletproof style coffee with coconut oil and grass-fed butter and blending that up. And you know what? I kind of jumped on the gravy train of like, oh, I look good, I'm healthy, I'm fine. I just started doing dollops of that stuff, you know. The coconut oil and the butter taste so good. They're creamy when you blend it. Don't stir it. If you're going to try this at home, don't stir it with a spoon. You're a fool. You need a blender. It makes a frothy, beautiful head on the top of the coffee. Oh, it's amazing. I still drink it to this day. I just don't drink 30 ounces of it. Yeah. I drink 6 ounces of it. You know what I mean? And I'm smart with my portions. But think about your stomach. I'm not a doctor, but think about your stomach and the stomach acids that are involved in digesting and breakdown. You need things in there in order for them to work. And when there's nothing in there for it to work, your stomach is churning and moving on itself. And over time, without any food in there, there could be an abrasive rub or some type of weird movement that your stomach lining is doing, and it cuts you. And then that cut sends a signal, hey, we have an injury, we need white blood cells, let's come down here and heal it. Well, the problem is you're still not continuing food intake, which is what I was doing, and I'm having acidic coffee. So I'm kind of just adding more problems to this little small problem that could have been shut down. Not to mention when you're not eating properly, your brain can just fire off on all sorts of emotional tangents. I'm a very overthinker. And I live so much in my head. Like I'm really present at a lot of times, but I'm very distant in my thoughts, and I am millions of miles away on my own conversational island, you know? So having that coupled with not eating properly and not having a good operating system, I think just slowly broke me down. And being stressed out with driving in a city, people honking at you, cutting you off, trying to get over, they're not being nice, you know, all of these little road rage bursts of things, they add up in me. And I didn't know how to really deal with them. You know, I know how to exercise. I know how to lift weights when I'm pissed off, and I know how to slow down and meditate and breathe. But there's so many more stresses that are involved in a day-to-day that you don't fully grasp. So it was a really big learning experience for me to realize that when that gut feeling, that's a real thing. You know, people, I mean, I'm getting chills talking about it. People talk about the gut feeling. And when you really are intuitive with yourself, your body tells you things, you know? And I legitimately was telling my body to fuck off. Like, stop telling me you're hungry. I don't care. I have a job to do. I have to go ride my bike. I have to go walk my dog. Your little need for nourishment can go piss off. I need to do other things, you know? And I'd slam like a freaking gel of stuff, you know, or like a quick protein bar, but it wasn't substantial, you know, and it was so inconsistent with the level that I was operating at. So I basically learned that I don't think I was having enough caloric intake. That's where my stomach probably got a little abrasive hit, you know, and I have other things going on. There was another job opportunity. Those people were really cool at the start, ended up ghosting me. I'm not going to drop names because I'm not a gossiper, but that really sucks when you ghost people. If you don't have clear communication with people, you guys are doing everyone a disservice. So just clearly communicate and then, you know, save people from getting ulcers.
How was your resting periods during that?
How was my resting period?
Yeah, like did you have time for rest? Did you living an extreme life? You would do.
I mean, yeah, I say extreme life, but like it was just I made myself go do stuff. So I mean, my rest is like come home, maybe smoke a little bowl, and you know just sit down, and I'm constantly stretching or doing some type of exercise. So it was a lot of just like on the ground with my foam roller. And for the most part, I just wasn't listening to what my stomach, my colon ultimately was telling me was going on. And so rest time was like, okay, but it was not fully rest time. When I would sit and meditate, those were the most influential moments and the most beneficial ones because I would either sit up or I'd lay down and I'd put my hands directly over where I feel agitated, which was my stomach area. I mean, I don't know exactly where my colon is, but it's in your abdomen. And I would just breathe and think about like how happy I am that I have the dog that I have, you know, the life that I'm living, I'm still healthy. And my stomach would like do all these movements and make noises, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. So I know I'm connecting with my gut and with my emotions and everything felt good. And then I just wander with my thoughts, you know, and then that would take me out of it. And so it was beneficial, but I was still not fully resting my mind. My mind was just going, you know. And I've also learned if you occasionally like smoke a sativa, sativas are uppers. And I really love being up. And when I had sativa, I was like, oh my God, so this thought I have to do this and I could maybe do this, maybe I can do this tomorrow. And I'm like, dude, relax, you know? So I learned a lot about that. I do like sober months and all that kind of stuff to really check in, see where my body is. But the craziest thing was I felt so good when I was on my bike. And that's really where I noticed that I think I have a problem, because the moment that I get on my bike and start riding, and it literally is life or death where like you don't pay attention, you get hit by a car or you fall off a jump or something, my stomach was fine. I didn't have any irritation, no agitation. And I vividly remember the last session I had, which was 1 week before I went into the ER, and we were riding my buddy Sean's backyard jumps, and he was like, I'm going to do the most laps I've ever done in my backyard today. And he's like, I'm going to aim for like 36. And I was like, dude, I'm going to do it with you. Every time we would come back up to the top of the ramp to where we drop in, I would stop and be like, oh, dude, I don't know what is going on, but my gut feels so weird. And then Sean would drop in, and I'm like, all right. And I'd go, and I wouldn't feel it, and then I'd feel it when I stop. And I just I did 40 laps that day. Like I was exhausted. You know, we destroyed ourselves. It was awesome. And I took apart my bike when I got home because I was like, something's not right. Because when I ride, I feel okay. And when I stop, I feel horrible. So I took apart my BMX and my road bike so I wasn't tempted to ride them. So I could really try to get a better understanding with what's going on.
We've written about this on our blog a number of times, but your hair is one of the first things that your body will stop producing at a normal rate. So you were treated and you started recovering, but at that point, perhaps your hair started thinning and it was falling out even.
Yeah. So it was, well, I want to mention the food intake. It was limited, but the food that I eat, I don't eat fast food. I don't eat junk. You know, like I am very conscious of what I eat. A lot of people were like, but you're so healthy. And I'm like, trust me, I'm eating healthy stuff. I just wasn't eating enough of it. So that's what it came down to. But when I really started to notice the hair falling out was 3 months after my initial diagnosis. That's when I started gaining muscle back. I started filling out my clothes again. I started feeling good. I started getting like that savage feel again where I'd lift weights and be like, oh, yes, it's here again, you know? And I was riding a little bit, but I noticed that when I'd put my hair in a bun, I got thick hair. When I put my hair in a bun, it was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And maybe I was doing 2 wraps of the hair tie and not 3, or maybe 3 and not 2. Like I could feel it, you know? And so I started looking things up. I started taking this medication called Stelara. It's a biologic. My best description that I have for that is it is a medication that tells your body, don't attack itself. It's okay. So if there's any issues in my gut where the white blood cells want to go mediate, the drug that I'm on, the medication that I'm on will say, it's okay, it's actually not happening, we're fine. And the Stelara is just meant to allow me to function without any issues. So I thought maybe it's a side effect of the medication. You know, I had been on it for maybe 1 dose, and it was like a higher dose than usual for the very first one to see if there's any reactions or whatnot. And that was when I noticed the hair loss. Would just take a shower, would brush it, and I saw it in the brush, and I'm like, that seems a little excessive. And my scalp was kind of red and itchy. I think I remember messaging you about having like an itchy scalp and all this. And so I've used, what was I using? Apple cider vinegar and water. That was something I heard was really good. So I was like using that to kind of soothe it and all this stuff. But it was still red, and it was just not having fun. And I started to see it more. I started to see my scalp in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I have a hairdresser friend. I asked her, I had my hat on, and I said, hey, does my hair look like it's thinning? I pull it off. She immediately knew. Immediately was like, yeah, you're losing your hair. And the doctors even told me, because I would message with them, and they said, well, hair loss is kind of one of the first things that stress will do to your body, you know. And you went the first 2 months where I didn't know what was going on. I went 2 months with diarrhea every single day. I mean, we're talking upwards of 20 times some days. You know, I mean, and these are not like unbelievable voluminous amounts. It was just you go to the bathroom and it's just water coming out like someone cranks a faucet and stops and you're done. And then you go about your business. 40 minutes later, I got to go back to the bathroom, faucet on, faucet off. Like that's how it was upwards of 20 times a day, you know? And the doctors were like, look, like you legitimately were malnourished. Yeah. That's why your body was shrinking and dying.
You probably had some pretty severe dehydration too.
Yeah. And that was another thing. I was doing the liquid IV powders.
Yeah.
I was doing like 3 of those a day. I was drinking Pedialyte because I could feel the dehydration.
Yeah.
I actually noticed that things were a little different. I used to ride my road bike to work and back. It was only a 6-mile ride. And on the ride back, there was a small hill, but on the ride there, you just drop down the hill. It's no biggie. On the ride back, I started getting winded up that hill, which it did a little bit for me, but it was like the kind of winded where you get a little tired and then you're like, you ain't no little tired sissy, like, and you want to push more. One of the last times that I rode it, I was so exhausted and I got to the top and had to stop and like looked back at the hill and go, what is happening, dude?
Yeah, like this shouldn't be this hard.
This is so, am I falling apart? Like it was just too rough. So yeah, I told my hairdresser friend, please look at my hair. You're thinning, obviously. And then she goes, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want you to cut it. I got to cut it. You know, it's just, I'm not going to be that guy. No offense to that guy out there. I'm not going to be that guy that's holding on to the longest part of my hair when the volume is not there. Mm-hmm. If I'm thinning and it's bad, we're shaving this mofo, and we're going to start from the ground floor, you know, the skull floor.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, you brought up a good point of, well, indirectly, there was a theme there of like your body was telling you like, hey man, like something's wrong. Like, look, we're falling out. You can't do the same work you could before. Like, those are all signals. I mean, this is an incredible machine that we as a species have like developed over so many like 100,000 years or more. I mean, I'm not an anthropologist, forgive me, right? But
100,000 is a little shy, but
sure.
It's all good.
Yeah,
Many years.
many millennia.
Millennia.
So, we have built-in like warnings, right? Like, hey, this hurts. Well, guess what, man? That's not supposed to hurt like that, right? Like, or this is falling out, or you know, this or that's wrong. It's like, man, you got to listen to those signals. I hear it. We hear it a lot, actually. Like, oh well, my hair has this thing going on, and then but then you start to like dissect like their lifestyle, and it's like, well, there you go, man. You don't drink any water,
exactly.
Or like, and in your case, you had an actual medical condition, but like for a lot of guys out there, it's like there's these small little tweaks of like, just be better to yourself. Yeah, you know, a lot of people don't pay attention to their gut health. Yeah, and like I'm not the healthiest person in the world, right? Like, I love a good cheeseburger. I'm a savage, but I take my gut health very seriously. Yeah. I love kombucha. I eat a lot of pickled food. Yep. I love coffee. Oh man. But I restrain myself, right? I limit myself. I can have 2 cups a day. That's it. Yeah. Minimum. The first one is to get me going. The second one is all pleasure. Yeah. You know?
And it's, you know, it's hard because we're not sitting here saying you need to limit your coffee intake. Everyone is so different with it. Yeah. And that's another difficult thing about Crohn's. Yeah. Everyone's experience is not the same. Right. You know, I looked on forums, and actually one of the guys that rides for GT, Brian Kaczynski, he has UC, ulcerative colitis. Not sure if he's like out about that. So sorry, Brian, if anybody hears that, but Brian actually helped me a lot talking to him, because this dude drinks tons of coffee. And I'm like, yo, don't you have UC? Like, don't you have issues? Like, no, it doesn't bother me like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy buys like 3 large coffees every time he goes out, you know, and here I am like, can I get my cappuccino and like 2 ounces? You know, So it's so different. But what I like that you brought up also comes back, it's not an excuse, but it's just when you're not paying attention to how things are running in your society, that's when you kind of get lost. And it was always, pre-COVID, it was always scary to call in sick to work. Nobody liked doing it. It was such a nerve-wracking sensation. But if you didn't feel good, suck it up. You got to go to work. You got to make money. You got to clock in. And so there were so many times throughout my life in the past where I would just say, stop, body, like, stop telling me these things. I have to go do stuff, you know, because this is more important. But realistically, we've become so detached from the actual importance of having a healthy body and listening to what feels good and what feels right. We've become so detached from that when those signals come up, we shut them down with a work schedule, you know? Yep. Yeah. And the job that I was doing, it was 5 days a week. It was 7 a.m. to like 4 every single day, not until 4. Usually it would be longer than that because it was crazy, but it was the first time I'd ever worked a job specifically like that. I've always been, I wouldn't say an entrepreneur, but I've always done a lot of different things. So I've never had, hey, every day is this to this. You know, it's always a lot of things changing, happening. But that schedule for 2 solid years, which was weird to hear that the oldest ulcer was potentially 2 years old. That timeline like hit me so specific. It just made me really start to pay attention, like, wow, okay, do I want to be in a position like this? Yeah, it was fun. Like I was the driver of the vehicle. I could park anywhere. I'd come to Ocean Beach and see you guys at the house, you know, like I'd stop by and say, what's up? Like, it was amazing. I'd bring
Drop
my
off
bike.
some coffees.
Yeah, drop off coffee. I'd bring my bike and ride on my lunch breaks and go to skate parks. You know, like, it was amazing. I'd see my homies around town. Like, it was so much fun. The freedom of that was great. The paycheck was great. The savings, love it. But realistically, I was just another part of the warehouse chain, you know, and I'm extremely replaceable. I don't think I am, but in that position, I am. And so it got to a point where after going to the hospital, after recovering, I didn't hear from anybody at that job. The only people I heard from were my supervisor and the owner, who were just, when can you come back to work? You know, the owner was, I'll give him this. He was a little more sensitive because he asked me, hey, how's your health? Since you say you can't come back to work. They expected me to come back to work 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. Lose 25, 30 pounds, lose your muscle, get a hemorrhoid in your butthole because I don't know where else hemorrhoids develop. But, go through all this stuff. I had a crazy hemorrhoid, which we'll get into that at some point, but it was so tender and sensitive. I couldn't sit like this, and to like, just to bend over and have your hemorrhoid hit your boxer shorts. Like, I was in crazy alarming pain. So I couldn't even walk my dog around the block, for them to say like, can you come back after 2 weeks? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? So at least he asked how I was feeling, and I appreciated that. But bottom line, never heard from a single other person from that job. And I have their numbers in my phone. I even reached out to one of the other guys who was another driver, and I said like, hey, it was really awesome getting to hang out with you. He's an older cat. He probably shouldn't even be working there. He should probably be retired, but he has nothing else going on. But I was like, hey, man, it was really fun working alongside of you. I felt like you and I had a good camaraderie compared to everybody else type stuff. Just wanted to say, like, thank you so much for entertaining me. Dude didn't even write back. Wow. The next time I saw him, he apologized for it. And I was like, well, hey, don't apologize. Just write back. Like, that's all it takes. It's amazing how much just writing back to people will, like, help make things better. But I just realized that I'm a fucking nobody. And it's okay. I've been a nobody my whole life, but there's certain moments where you're like, really, nobody cares at all. Mm-hmm. Like they had people calling in, giving me compliments for how fun I am when I deliver, or how good I was about making sure their order was right, or the order was messed up. He went an extra step and brought it back when I wasn't clocked in with my truck. Like all these other things, and it's like you don't want to just check in and say like, hey, I hope you're doing all right.
And it's like it's almost like dehumanizing.
Totally. And there was, and I didn't enjoy this because I don't like to believe that certain systems operate this way, but there was a warehouse worker and an office worker, weird kind of headbutting vibe at that place, And I was a warehouse worker. So there were these moments where office workers were just kind of like, sticks up my ass and like, screw you. They were just bitchy. And you're like, what is this? Yeah. We're supposed to like operate together. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit of a mess there. It's a great company. I won't name names. If you know me, you know what I'm talking about. I don't mean to talk bad about them in any way, shape, or form. It's just a production line.
You're making an observation.
Yeah. And maybe if one of them hears this or whatever, maybe just check in with your workers. Yeah. Like it doesn't hurt. There was like weird drama back there and stuff. And like, I would call one of the dudes out. The first like 2 months that I was there, this guy would always give me a weird response. I would like ask him like, hey, how do I do this? Cause I'm still new. And he'd be like, you don't have to worry about that. I'm like, no, dude, I'm legitimately asking how I do this. I would like to do it correctly. Oh, don't worry about it. No one does it. Not what I'm getting at. And he was just kind of like a little bit of a dick. And I straight up just called him out one day. I was like, look, man, you're the only guy I have issues with. Why? What's going on? Yeah. Why? I don't want to have beef with you. Why do you always talk shit to me? Why do you always give me weird answers? And just the fact that I called him out and we were able to man kind of feel awkward and talk about it, then we were cool. Then he told me about the new Eminem album, and I bought it, and I fucking love Eminem, greatest of all time, like. So
that's an interesting thing you brought up. Just communication between men, right? And we have this through like shitty Hollywood and other stupid sources. We have this flawed perspective of how men should communicate, right? And just the fact that you were able to like reach out and just be like, hey man, I don't know what it is, between us, but like, let's squash that.
Yeah.
And whereas I feel like the method that's pushed on men is like, oh, don't show weakness. Like, oh, what are you, sensitive, bro? And it's like, yeah, maybe I am.
Yeah.
Like, I have feelings.
Yeah.
I have to look at you every day, man. Like,
Right.
I don't want to have an issue.
And you don't want to walk into a space or even park your car, ride your bike up, and then realize, oh, there's all these weird little moments about to happen.
Yeah.
All these weird little things, you know? And like, I'm 35 now. I realized it a little bit ago. I'm emotional. I'm sensitive, and I'm affected by stuff like that. And I have no issues asking until someone goes, stop fucking asking me, you know?
Yeah.
And it does make it a little difficult for me to have male relationships and male friendships because of, I pretty much, and I don't mean, everything is so specific with genders these days. I don't mean it in like a derogatory sense, but I communicate more like a female. I like to overly communicate. I don't mind asking 30, 40 questions. I don't mind if you go off on a tangent and tell me why you couldn't get back to me because you're emotionally unavailable, this happened, blah, blah, blah. Those help me. That stuff helps me paint a picture to where you're at in this conversation. And then I realize, oh, you're not mad at me. You're just mad because you didn't get a blowjob last night. Like, you haven't come for 4 weeks. Like, I get it now, you know? It's not me. So you're 100% right. There is a weird male to male, straight male generally, communication barrier.
Yeah.
You know?
This kind of touches on a conversation I had recently where, like, I personally, to like you touched on, like, I don't want to like gender stereotype, right? So the way I think about that, because I agree, like, I don't want to assign, draw lines in the sand, right? So I think of it as like nobody is all, you have masculinity and femininity, right? No one is all of one. No one is just masculine.
Very true.
Regardless of what you identify as, no person can just be masculine or just be feminine. Every single person is a mix of both.
Yeah.
And because we are all on a spectrum of just humanity, there's 3 guys sitting here, and then we have Garb over there. So there's 4 men right in this spot in this moment, and all 4 of us have the slider of masculinity, femininity falls on some different part of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's even possible for someone to like, and well, before we even get into that, there's no such thing as like someone doesn't feel things, right? Like,
yeah, feeling nothing.
Maybe if you're like a catatonic like psychopath and you eat people, right? Like, maybe that. But like when you said, like, you know, I'm gonna admit, like, I feel things, right? To me, the difference between you and like a tough guy, the only difference is that you're willing to admit you feel things. Because even the tough guys feel things too.
Totally.
They're just scared to say it.
Totally.
You know?
And it's amazing how disarming you can be to a tough guy by going up to him and be like, hey man, I'm really sorry, or like, I was feeling like this, I assumed the wrong thing, my bad. And being vulnerable, it's incredible how that helps every situation. You know, it's really nice.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know, I was actually a cop for 2 years, and I worked for the San Diego Sheriff's Office, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely did not know that.
Yeah. And one of the, I mean, man, I got in a lot of scraps.
I can't even imagine.
Sometimes they're just unavoidable, man.
Yeah.
It was going to end up that way no matter what. But and then you had moments where it's like, I'm not a huge guy, I'm like 6'2", but you know, I'm not a small guy either. And sometimes you have these guys and they pick you. You know, hey, we're throwing down. Like, okay. But I used to like.
Yeah, he's like, I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2", and I feel tiny next to you.
I'm full of big mana, dude. It's just in my genes. But I would use humor to disarm people. And to really de-escalate situations. Because like I learned, you know, if I can make you laugh, you probably don't want to punch me. The
quickest distance between 2 strangers is laughter.
Yeah. And so I would deal with these guys and they're all pissed off, and then I'd be like, listen, man, I really don't want you to punch me in the face. You know, like I didn't come to work wanting to get punched today, and like I would just keep like kind of picking at them. Like
my modeling career is gonna suffer if you punch me in the face right now.
Yeah, no, and I would tell them like, dude, if I come home with a black eye, like I'm not getting laid. Like, you know, I would just make up stuff, and then they would just start laughing, and then I'd be like, all right, man, like what's the problem?
Yeah.
Like, oh well, and it's like, okay, well, why don't we just fix it?
Yeah.
You know, like if we fight, then we're gonna have to fix it after.
Yeah.
But why don't we just skip the fight part?
Yeah.
Let's just fix it.
Yeah.
You know, and then. And that really helped me out a lot, like
Yeah.
just learning how to communicate with other guys in a way where there's not a confrontation. And a lot of the times guys are already like hyped up and aggressive because they think you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they feel they have to be prepared,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So then if you come at them like, well, hold on a second, man. Like, I don't appreciate when you say that to me. Like, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. Like,
Yeah.
I think you're cool.
Yeah.
I want you to think I'm cool. Like, you start throwing those things out there, and they're like, oh man, like,
Yeah, like, no one likes to punch someone who's saying they're sorry.
yeah.
That's not
you hurt
cool.
my feelings.
Yeah. And so I think that a lot of guys can really practice effective communication
Yeah.
and just admitting like you feel things.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a kind of feels like a cliche, silly thing these days. I don't specifically do this because I just speak my mind, but maybe take a journal and journal some thoughts down that you've had of the day and of the interactions that pissed you off. You know,
Yeah.
I had mentioned that I was maybe going to quit my job and do it was going to be a different coffee job thing. And these guys were really good at the start, but then they fucking ghosted me. And I mean, that was before I went into the hospital, but that was when I started having weird gut sensations because I was so emotionally committing myself to quitting my current job and jumping in full steam with a new coffee company who had never done coffee before. They had a really good backing as like a foundation, but I was nervous, but I was listening to myself, and that's why I didn't fully jump. But the thing was, these fools ghosted me, you know? And to this day, I don't let that stuff go. I hold grudges. I know it's a bad thing, but I got to a certain point when I was healing coming out of the hospital where I have my old phone. The current phone that I have, that dude's number is not in my current phone. He's been deleted. He's been blocked. It's all whatever it is, you know? And my old phone still had his number in there. And I turn it on and go, like, I listen to music and stuff when I'm at home. And I just happened to see his number from our text conversations. And I'm like, oh, dang, you know what? Okay. So I unblocked that number and I sent him a text. And I said, hey, man, I just wanted you to know it really hurt my feelings that you guys ghosted me. It would have been so awesome of you to just tell me to my face, we don't see this working out. I would have been understanding. I would have appreciated you for admitting that. And I would have said, yeah, I agree. Because I'm feeling the same thing. It doesn't feel right, dude. Something's not cool here. But now that you've ghosted me, I mean, this guy's older guy. He's a solid dude. You know, like, I want to go start shit with him. I want to go to his business and be like, yo, like, what's up, dude? You remember me? Yeah. But so what I did was I just texted him and just said it hurt my feelings. You know, I actually do wish you guys the best, but bottom line, y'all suck and you're little sissies for not admitting something because we could have saved so much trouble, but you wanted to ghost me. So I hope you learn from this, and I hope you're also laughing and showing everybody in the business how much of a little bitch I am, because it doesn't bother me, because I'm fine with being vulnerable and letting you know that you hurt my feelings. And then waited till I saw it said like red, and then I deleted his number again. And was like, done, block, peace out, bitch. Yeah. Like, I just needed to get it off my chest. So if you guys got stuff that's brewing, write it down and then burn it and throw it away so no one ever sees it or something, you know?
You got to get it out.
Yeah. There's moments where so much time has gone by where that grudge isn't the same anymore. And you can sit down and reevaluate emotionally how you feel about that situation. And it ebbs and flows, and maybe you're creating a different story and all this stuff, but what can you learn from it? You know? And at that moment, I realized, I was like, I want to do something that makes me feel a little better as a person, and I wouldn't mind being around other people that have that same thought process, you know? And unfortunately, I don't know if this is connected, but I just kind of think it is. I was given this person's contact from a friend, and now that friend and I have like zero communication, because they worked with them too, you know, in a different capacity. And it got to the point where they would call me and say like, hey man, they're talking about you. Like, are you asking a bunch of questions and like doing all this stuff? And I was like, yeah. Are you kidding? I'm going to quit my job with benefits to go work for them. You're damn right I'm asking them questions. I'm not blowing them up every day expecting answers. I tell them, hey man, just had this thought. What do you think about an I-9 form? And they're like, what's an I-9 form? I'm like, oh my God, you want me to work for you? You don't even know what that is? Okay. So, you know, they stepped in and was like, hey, just wanted to let you know, fly on the wall. And I'm like, hey, I appreciate that. But it's none of your business how I run my business, how I operate for myself. They wanted me to do their social media. They wanted me to be a barista, all this stuff. I'm going to need to communicate with them. Sure. This is the step one of figuring out how well they communicate. Yeah. And they don't do it well. So I was already having my own reservations, you know, and, you know, it's went the way that it went. But now that friend of mine and myself barely even see each other. When it was more consistent before, you know? So unfortunately, I think it kind of got tied into that. Mm-hmm. And as far as like the pack thing goes, like I was involved in a pack when I was really, really young. And now I've been a lone wolf since 15, 16. I've always kind of felt like kind of on my own, you know? For sure. Yeah. It's just, and not in like a, I don't need anybody. I need people, but it's just, I don't need bullshit.
Yeah, there's a saying for that too. I'm just full of these sayings.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's great.
Don't be afraid to eat alone.
Yeah.
You know, because then you know what you bring to the table.
100%.
You know?
You know, like once you're like, hey, what's going on with this situation, with our relationship? Like, what is it? There's no going back from asking that question. So I've done that a few times. And then other times I'm just like, cool, I pull back for my own sanity, my own sake. Like I keep my little distance there.
Right on.
But yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I like all the sayings. Sayings are good.
And we this is a house of learning hair doctors, so
it's good to have.
We stay sharp in here, man.
Some,
no, it's good.
One-liners.
Yeah.
So you came to decide to cut it off eventually. Yep. Your health is back. You're feeling stronger. You gained your weight back.
Yep.
I gotta say, the hair is coming in thick.
It feels so good.
When did you actually cut it? And did you immediately start growing it back, or did you wait for a little while? Or
so trimmed it. I don't know if I know the specific date. Probably mid-November. It was right before Thanksgiving. So trimmed it then. Cried while it was getting cut. You know, just, it was like good tears though. It wasn't like sad tears. It was nice. I really love drastic change. I think it's really fun to do that kind of stuff. So it was a little cathartic and all that, but immediately my scalp felt so good. The next morning, it was like night and day different. My hair was still a little thin.
How short? Did you shave it all off?
No. So pretty much how it is right now, just a little bit shorter and a little more groomed.
But it was very long before.
Very long, yeah. It was
almost down to your waist.
Like yours, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it was long.
So you cut off 2 feet of hair.
Yeah.
Thinning hair, albeit, but
yeah.
So there was some release there and some goodbye and some feelings.
I picked up the hair, you know, and we like put it in. I don't think it's in braids. I think it's just kind of in its own little like 4 little ponies. And I just kind of held it and was just like, all right, this is super weird, but it felt great, you know. And then I let it grow out a little bit and then got it trimmed. And then I think let it grow out again and got it trimmed, or maybe I'm on the again part. So I think I've only had it trimmed maybe once since the initial cut. But it's due for it now. Like when I put on my hats, it kind of sticks out a little bit on the edges, and I'm like, kind of rocking this short hair thing. I don't really mind it. I just throw some water on it, and it's all good. And I don't have to worry about getting it caught in my armpit when I'm putting on sweatshirts or, dude,
in your bike chain or in your sprocket or who knows?
The bike, like, yeah, it actually feels good. So I'm not really sure where I want to go with it yet, in the sense of I'm not hating the short hair. I do miss the length, you know, but I'm kind of enjoying it. And so I'm enjoying looking at myself in the mirror and seeing a different version of myself today. I enjoy that. It's as much as I am like, fuck you, God damn it, you bastard, you know, like, why'd you cut your fucking hair? Like, as much as I do that and I go back and forth with my own little issues, I do like to see progression.
Right.
And progression doesn't always have to be what you think is going to be the absolute best, but it may be the best for the moment, And, I gained more weight. Like, I weighed 185 my whole life, forever. Not my whole life. I didn't come out 185, but it basically for like the last like 17 to 20 years, I've been 185. You couldn't force me to gain weight, and you couldn't force me to lose it. It just didn't work. And now I weigh like 200. Like, I feel so good. I'm eating, I turned off one of my alarms so it wouldn't go off during the podcast, but like every 3 hours, a food alarm goes off. And I'm pretty up to it now where when I start feeling my stomach, it's within a 5-minute window of when that alarm goes off. So I'm very much more in tune with it now. It feels so good. If I wait 45 minutes to an hour after that initial sensation, and maybe I'm riding so I have my alarm off, I start getting like bubble gut and like start like, oh, I need to eat right now, which I never had that in the past because I would suppress it.
Speaking of your weight loss and then back to getting back your weight again, what's that like, in your BMX life? Has that taken a change or?
Not too much. Yeah, that's a good point because I'm always fascinated by exercises and workouts and like
right.
being buff. Like, I've always wanted to be not as tall and lean. I wanted to be shorter and more muscular my whole life. I've always wanted that. But realistically, riding a bike, there's only a certain deviation of size and voluptuousness in terms of your body that you can acquire in order to make bike riding easier or harder.
Right.
And I learned when I was back in Humboldt, this is when I was not stretching as much as I should. There's nothing going on in Humboldt. So I was working 5 days a week as a massage therapist. I was going to the gym 5 days a week, and I was riding my bike 3 to 5 days a week. So I was go, 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 and I wasn't stretching enough. I wasn't getting body work. And my pecs were the first muscles that changed the most. They like started getting a little bigger and got some little like man boobs going on. And I started to lose my grip strength in my pinky and ring finger on my left hand. I do pull-ups at the gym, and as I'm pulling up, my fingers would start coming off, and I'd look down at them. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I would like try to close them, and they weren't closing. My hands started blowing off on my grips. When I would carve like a vert wall, they would just blow off at the bottom, just my left one. And so I went to an acupuncturist, and she mentioned that all of the nerves for your arms, your upper extremities, they come out of your cervical spine. So anywhere between, I want to say it's like C3 and maybe C5 are where they come out of. And they go into what's called a nerve plexus. It's kind of like a nerve intersection, and it's underneath your armpit, like underneath your shoulder area. And so if you have a lot of muscle tissue, not a lot, I wasn't like bulging, but I had muscle tissue that wasn't being massaged. It wasn't being soothed, and it wasn't being relaxed. So the nerve conductivity between that, the nerve responses were getting shortened because it was a lot of pressure and not a lot of stretchiness and fluidity. And so the nerve signals to my ring finger and my pinky finger were not firing for the grip to hold on. And so she did a bunch of acupuncture points. I got massage, did it for about 3 weeks, and my grip strength came back. And it was then that I realized I can't go be this buff-ass lumberjack that I am trying to be and ride a bike. Because not going to lie, I was throwing that bike around a lot easier, but I was suffering in the way of holding on to it. It was a weird thing. So I think which I'm a little more privy to now, I'm really good at foam rolling, stretching, all that kind of stuff. So I'm at a pretty good spot where, of course, now that I've reached 200 pounds, I'm like, let's go to 210. let's get a little bigger, like let's get beefy. Like, I love that. And if I'm around those types of people, that's what's going to be my drive. But then I'll go be around BMXers, and I'm going to be like, damn, my hammies are so tight. Like, I can't do this right now. So it's a nice balance, but it hasn't really changed much, So yeah, it's been good.
Right on.
Yeah. Landing a little heavier these days, I guess.
I saw a video. I think you maybe posted it yesterday or last couple days, and you go over this rail and then you like land flat, and you're like, ah!
Yeah, and my bars went forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love just doing like weird little gaps and stuff. And there's this kicker ramp. Actually, the same ramp that I brought here to jump with you guys.
Okay, yeah.
It's the same one. I had this line in mind, and it's at Claremont Skate Park. And where I set it up, I have to jump over this railing. But the downside is the quarter pipe that I'm trying to jump into. It is so close to that railing. If it had another 2 feet of deck, it would have been no problem whatsoever. I would have given like an extra crank, and I would have been fine. But since it was so close, I had to jump over the rail, peak so I am over the rail, and then needed to drop immediately. And I started dropping my front end just a little too early. It was the very first go, and that's always like the most hairy. My hands are sweaty just thinking about it. And right as I peeked over the rail, you hear me make a noise. I'm like, oh! And I was more front end heavy than I was back. If I knew I was going to land flat, it would have been no problem, but I didn't. And so right as I hit, my bars went so far forward. It's called Chicago style, and ride them really far forward, or like Corey Anastasio style bars. Shout out to Nasty. And thankfully that happened because I didn't have over tightened stem bolts. If I had over tightened stem bolts, my bars might have broken, or myself might have broken, because I wasn't letting go. Like, there was no question. So I think the weight kind of added to that. But
so you're landing really heavy here.
I landed really heavy, mainly on the front end.
I just mean in general, though. You're 200. Max in 200. You're landing really heavy. How do you avoid your cranks busting or snapping? You got to have some really solid cranks on there.
Yep, Profile Racing, baby. They make the best cranks ever. I throw them through all kinds of stuff, and they're fine. Even the plastic GT pedals were totally fine. I mean, I didn't land necessarily down on them. Once I hit with the front tire and then went to my back tire, right as the initial front tire hit, I went so far forward that my feet blew off. What? So there wasn't really that much pressure on the cranks. I would say it'd be more on the front tire and the forks and stuff.
I just meant in general now, riding at 200 pounds instead of 190 in the past, and giving you a chance to show off those beautiful Profile 3-piece cranks.
Exactly.
And they're a sponsor of yours, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually,
long-time sponsor. Yeah,
they've been hooking me up for quite a few years now, and I would say it just became a little more official in maybe not last calendar year specifically, but in the last year or so has been a little more like, all right, fully team. Official. Yeah. And
awesome, man.
That's been, I mean, is this camera the one going to me? I've got the Profile Imperial Sprocket tattooed on my knee.
Dude, a true brand ambassador.
The middle piece here is just like some mountains and like a little forest. Thank you, Sam, for tattooing this. I saw DMX the same night that I got my first BMX tattoo. So that was pretty sweet. I had a swollen ass leg at the end of that night. But yeah, man, that's my favorite sprocket. It's not the one I'm running right now. It's the Profile Imperial. And yeah, that's my first ever BMX tattoo, and I love it.
Badass, man. Hey, we'll get a little bit closer shot on the bike here, but can you just zoom in a little bit on this steed here? Tell us a little bit more about your bike, and are there any other sponsors featured on there?
Yeah, so it's a GT Globetrotter frame. Thank you, GT, for supplying me with the beautiful frames you have.
Dope.
This one is in, I don't know specifically, like the trans red. And it's interesting. I was going through my mind wondering if I should say trans red out loud. It was just like a translucent. I mean, I don't know specifically what the color
translucent?
is. Yeah, because you can still see the welds, but there's like a sparkle to it. This red one is beautiful. I was riding, it's like a candy. Yeah. I was riding the gold one for a little bit. It's more like a translucent kind of yellowish gold.
Got it.
And yeah, so GT Profile. I have a really cool little pad there for the nuts when you land on them, which in that clip I definitely hit a little bit of the nuts. It wasn't too bad. Everyone's like, dude, how were the nuggets? I'm like, nah, they were way better than you think, but looking at it looked rough. This is a really cool thing. One of the GT riders, his name is Dan Conway. He has a little signature snakeskin with this company called The Yeah, and that's his signature pad set. So I was like, dude, I got to buy one of those. Those are so sweet. And it works well with like the animal print theme that I have going on. But yeah, GT Profile, they're the main sponsors, and they're keeping me rolling. It's been really good. I have a really good buddy, Philip at Odyssey, that hooks me up. So thank you, Odyssey, and thank you, Philip. And thank you, Jeff Z, the team manager of GT, and Matt Copeland, the team manager of Profile. Just went out to Florida and saw him for Swamp Fest.
Awesome, man. We'll link them up in the show notes. Leading me to ask, what is going on in the BMX circuit? You just were recently at Swamp Fest in Florida?
Yes, sir.
Cracking?
It was insane. It rained a huge chunk of the time, which was very unfortunate.
Oh, boy.
But those guys moved the majority of the ramps indoors. It was like an indoor setup that they had there. It was great. It was so much fun. My personal experience there, I was a little frustrated because I had just found out 3 days before flying there that I had a cracked head tube, which is the top part of the frame, the small little tube in the very front. There's the top tube, which is like where your balls would hit if you were to crotch it. And then there's the down tube or the bottom tube. So on the welds of the head tube, there were cracks from repeated landing like I did in that clip, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do so many roof drops and so many big gaps, and you come up a little sketchy a few times. Like there's only so much abuse it can take. So unfortunately, but fortunately, I had to get a new frame, and I built it up while I was out in Florida. So anybody that rides knows that building a new bike is awesome, and at the same time, it's terrifying because now you have a whole new setup. Nothing feels the exact same. And I went and rode a bunch of sketchy ramps. So it was like, oh gosh, it was so crazy. But it worked out to be such an awesome time. It was super fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And what else? Any more competitions? You're just out, you're riding for fun, doing your stuff on a pretty regular basis.
Mainly ride for fun. GT has a video coming out called SIFT. It's CYFT, Can You Film This? And it's like a full-length team video that people have been working on for years. And so when I jumped on the team, I was able to start working on this too. And just got wind, like, gosh, last Friday that the video is completed. We just have to, you know, take a little more time. They're gonna do some video premieres and all this stuff. So it's gonna take a little bit more until it comes out. But doing little videos like that, I'm hoping to go back to France next month, and that would be amazing. There's a really cool company out there called Unicorn, and they're putting on the second annual Shorts and Socks contest. And I went to the first one. It was awesome. And yeah, man, it's going to be great to see my buddy Thomas, who got released from prison. Thomas, if you hear this, I love you. Cannot wait to see you. It's a whole nother can of worms we can get into.
Congratulations. Yeah, we're familiar with it, man.
Yeah. So thank goodness for the judicial system and things working out in the favor of innocent people.
Nice.
So I can't wait to see him. That's the whole reason I really want to go to France, is to see him, and to add a little bit of a jam contest thing on top of that, which he'll be one of the MCs there. That's just even better.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Loving it. Still pedaling.
Still pedaling. No plans of slowing down. You know, I'd take care of myself as much as I can. You know, working for the YMCA now, getting to teach little kids BMX lessons. And, you know, it's been, you know, that's the job I ended up going into because Gary Young is the director there. Thank you, Gary Young, for just being Gary. Gary's been in the scene for 30-something years, and, you know, he's been a pro pretty much like the whole time. He's from San Diego, and now that he's the director there, I was like, can I come work with you? So it's been great to be around him.
One thing I was thinking about, especially when I watched you just freaking send it, you know, hopefully not killing my two bosses, right? I never doubted you for a second, but like when people watch stunts, they're watching you do it, but then they're really envisioning themselves doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where the awe comes from, of like, oh my God, I could never do that, right?
Yeah.
And so one way that when I watch your videos, I feel like as entertaining as it is to watch, it parallels the long hair message is like confidence. Yeah. And I see you like doing these crazy stunts or tricks or whatever, what have you. And I think like, man, the confidence it takes to do it, and not like, oh, I'm pretty sure it'll work out, but like, I know I can stick this, you know?
Blind faith.
Yeah. but like, even so, you have the confidence of like, to just go for it. And I think that that's something that we can parallel to guys that like they want the long hair or they have the long hair and they're trying to keep it and stand up to the wife or the girlfriend or R.I.P. Chuck's hair.
Normal society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a message in there of like you just gotta not just necessarily just go head first. I mean, haha, long hair, right? Head first. But there's a message about confidence in there. Like you got to believe in yourself, man. And like we get messages about guys saying like, oh, you know, I kind of have male pattern baldness, or I don't know, my hair is very greasy, or like a very close friend of mine, he has really coarse hair. And there's always these things of like you could tell it's hurting their confidence. Yeah. And it's like, well, no, how do we build like especially now as you're taking more of like an instructor role as well, like how do you what do you communicate to these people to like help build their confidence?
I just let them identify what they enjoy and build off of that. Okay. You know, I just taught a lesson to a kid yesterday, and he was struggling a little bit. You know, he crashed a few times, and I could sense that he wasn't fully there and wasn't really wanting to do it. And so what I actually did was I had him work on some manuals, which manuals when you're starting out are horrendous. They piss you off so much. And I wanted to see how he was going to operate in that world of frustration. And, you know, he was screaming, getting pissed off and all this stuff. But what I ended up asking them after we were done, I said, hey, you ever stick your head out your dad's window when he's driving and you see things that you want to ride? And he's like, yeah. And I go, don't ever lose that. We see things in a different way than other people see the world. We see things in ways that we can potentially have fun on. Don't ever forget that we're having fun. And so I just wanted him to realize, even though he's frustrated at certain points, we do enjoy riding bikes, you know? And that's actually a little mantra that I tell myself. I don't tell myself it every single time, but I do when I put in a lot of runs at a spot. If I'm like doing something over and over and over, I get frustrated, and I don't ever want to be that guy who's like, let's just fucking do it now. Hit record. Let's go. I never want that. That doesn't make me feel good. Even though I feel it a little bit, what I'll tell myself, I mean, people have heard me say it out loud as I'm riding up to the takeoff or whatever. I say, I love BMX. I love my bike. I love riding. Like I say it as loud as I possibly can. And that's why I kiss all the spots that I do crazy shit on. I kiss my bike. I have a little dog paw sticker on my top tube.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm about to really send myself, I will kiss it, and I think about coming back to Roxy, and I kind of I either say it out loud or say it to myself, like, I'm going to come home to you. Like, I'll be able to walk you tonight, you know? And I think about her for just a moment, which helps take the frustration or the fear and set it aside for a moment and realize there's a larger purpose for my existence, which kind of helps to increase the confidence. Do we still have a little time to keep going?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually going to say that I have to run upstairs to sign a multi-trillion-dollar contract, but I would love to continue on here, Maty. Excellent. And can you be sure to let our team know where they could follow you, connect with you after the show?
Absolutely.
And I'll let the boys here take it to the finish line. As always, pleasure having you here, man. You're a fine man. You're a great influence and example for everyone in our community. I think we learn a lot from this show, and thanks for being on with us, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You guys got it under control here.
We got this. We got this.
I started to lose a lot of confidence after diagnosis, after being so frail, you know, and 4 months after diagnosis, I had an opportunity to go to Louisville, Kentucky with GT, to go to this indoor park, ride a new indoor park there and ride some street and all this other stuff. And we go there. It was my first time like legitimately riding. And we go there, everything's fun. We go out to ride street, and we go to this one famous spot in Kentucky, Louisville. And it's kind of like a dam type of setup, like a water dam thing. And it has like this really cool, interesting spillway. The bottom has this nice little transition, but up top, there's a very large ledge. And I wasn't really looking at it at first, but Dan Conway, the guy who I said with the snakeskin thing, he was like, yo, Ratty, that's got your name written all over it. You do one of your little like thingy things and jump around, spin around. And I'm like, oh my God, that's massive, dude. He's like, you got that all day, dude. And I'm like, all right, well, I never take my bike up onto something unless I'm going to do it. I will always get myself up first, and then I go through all the motions. I stand up there, I close my eyes, I do all the turns, all the little pivots, the things that I think I'm going to have to go through. And it started to feel like it's possible, you know, and I'm like, all right, I think I'm ready for this. And this is the first time I've really sent myself since the diagnosis. So I was terrified. And one of my good friends who was there, who was helping us film, he has filmed the majority of my clips in the most recent edit that I had. And he has accredited me with like being super quick. And he's like, Maty knows what he wants. Like he goes up on a roof and he's off in 45 seconds. Like he knows what he's capable of. And when I told him I'm ready to go, from telling him I'm good and me climbing up and me being done and doing it, it was 8 minutes. And that threw me a little crazy because I was up there and I had a little bit of a sore shoulder. I was just like bunny hopping, kind of sitting a little twinge of pain, just a tiny, the smallest little twinge. And I was nervous that if right when I hopped to stall my tire, I'd feel that little pain and it would mentally check me out of what I was doing. So I was super nervous about that. And there's also, I'm doing a brake trick, so I'm nervous about my brakes not grabbing, so I'm like rubbing them with sweat and all these little things. But I went through an emotional roller coaster up on that ledge. I was yelling like, like getting so loud, and I started getting teary-eyed and like a little crying, you know, like I was going through all these emotions because now I've been faced with the fact that I'm not invincible. And it freaked me out because before I would have just sent it, you know? Yeah. And then, of course, first try, pull it, no big deal. And I actually started crying afterwards. I rode up to the dudes and everyone gave me high fives like, thank you. Hey, I'm good. I just need to cry. And these are happy tears. And I just like, there's a picture of me like holding like this and I am just crying and it feels so good. Like it felt so good because that confidence got shook. Yeah. You know, the confidence for sure got shook, but I was able to still keep it maintained. It was really, really nice to be able to still have it.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. I really liked when you touched on, doesn't matter if I'm not like getting it right or what, like so this thing I'm trying to do, the fact that I'm able to do it, like the fact that you can still ride,
yeah.
Just even then, even if you're not nailing it, but you're just able to go and try, yeah. Makes you appreciate it. And so, you know, initially we were talking about confidence and with the hair and how that can parallel with your confidence on the bike. And I was thinking like, well, some guys, like my best friend, for example, don't really love their hair, like the way it looks, but and they found that out by growing it out. And so like, you know, my friend is a little self-conscious about his hair, but I tried telling him like, dude, but you have long hair, right? So even if it doesn't look exactly perfect and it's not the way you envisioned it, you're able to do it.
Yeah.
But the fact is you have the long hair, right?
Yeah.
And appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's a gift, dude.
Yeah. And that was, that's exactly what it came down to for me was, you know, I'm up on that ledge and I just thought, dude, 4 months ago, you were so underweight, just got diagnosed with a thing that you thought was going to ruin your riding career. Mm. You are now on a ledge in Louisville, Kentucky with the GT team, mm-hmm. and you're about to send it.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest move you've done since diagnosis, mm-hmm. you know, and just being able to be in that spot, I was happy and I was proud. And even if I would have crashed and didn't hurt myself that bad, I would have been okay with it. You know, I was even at the point where I'm on the wall and I said, can we maybe come back tomorrow? Like, are we going to have time to come back tomorrow? And they're like, I mean, I guess, but you're up there now. And I'm like, you're so right. Like, I'm right here. Like, damn it. And it rained all day the next day. So it was like, it was perfect, you know? And another thing with like listening to yourself, you know, there's a moment where some BMXers have pulled so many things, so many tricks in so many different ways that they just assume it's going to be fine, you know? And false confidence can help to a large degree, but it won't get you through everything. You know, it's okay to fake it till you make it, but there has to be a really strong part of you that is very focused.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that was why it took 8 minutes, because I was teetering. I was teetering so hard on that line of like, no, dude, don't do this. You're going to hurt yourself. It's going to be a shitty time flying back on the plane with like a bum, whatever. This is going to be fucked up. Your brakes are going to slip, you know? And I was just like, stop with the voices. Like, and that's where I think the audible, and I was like shaking my hands out because I could feel it building up in me. So
I want to touch upon that. You know, when we filmed last year.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when you're on a bike or a skateboard or any type of tool out there, creativity comes about.
Yeah.
And one of the things I liked about when we were filming together for the Longhairs is that the way you saw difficulty was you wouldn't stop there. You know, like you would kind of think like, well, what else could we do? Like, wait, hold on. There's got to be another way.
Yeah.
And so with that, I want to correlate that with the hair stuff. You know, a lot of people might be stuck at a certain point, but you could find, you know, through creativity and what is your authenticity, you know, not being fake, you know, like what can you find that works for you?
Yeah.
So shout out to you and all those guys are doing stuff that are tough, like in Louisville.
Yeah.
Yeah. Side note, that day that we shot where you were like you jumped and then you like bounced off the fence.
The fence. Yeah.
That was the first day I ever met the team.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That was my introduction.
That's right.
That was my introduction
sweet.
to the Longhairs. Yeah.
That's rad. Well,
yeah.
I'm in a bike shop and he says, "Hey, you got a nice mane." And I was like, "Thanks, dude. That's a little weird, but all right, whatever."
And then yo, long hair.
Yeah, and then I realized I was like, well, it's not that nice. Like it's kind of dirty, and like I started being a little sensitive about it. And he's like, "No, man, I had this company, blah blah," and he gave me a hair tie, you know. And that was the initial thing where that's not generally a thing you would say to another man. Men don't really dish out comments other than like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, you looking big." It's like, all right, cool, but you're not like, "Dude, your hair looks great." Like guys don't usually say that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's one of the things that set you all kind of aside was you guys are caring about a thing that every man has, but maybe not necessarily wants to speak about it.
I'd like to put it on record that we all here like to break stereotypes.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. We don't
Straight
believe
up.
in the stereotypes here.
Straight up.
The one thing that I've recently been educated on is just learn to accept praise.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
I think as men we're expected to like be performatively humble is how I call it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, "Hey man, you got great hair." Like, I don't know, I haven't washed it. It's like, listen, it doesn't matter. It looks good right now. And the guy's giving you a compliment. Just, "Hey, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it."
Yeah.
You know? So, and then this is something I told a friend recently, because they have a really hard time with praise. And I said, okay, maybe you don't think that way of yourself, that you have the nice this or that, or you're great at whatever your skill is. I said, do you respect me? Well, yeah, of course. So then you respect my opinions, right? And my opinion of you is of high praise. So even if you're initially not willing to think of yourself highly like that, you can at least respect me enough to accept this praise I'm giving you. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good way to spin it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Man, we're just we have a meeting actually every Tuesday, and we always try to have like a team exercise of, you know, just thinking outside the box. And one of the reasons I love being on this team is like you can't work here and not constantly seek to better yourself.
Yeah.
Just like personal development, developing our masculinity. That's part of our core vision at the Longhairs. And so just little things like that, like even I've gotten better at receiving compliments and taking credit for stuff that I like, ideas that I have. This is something I talked about with Elefante recently, where I'll have like a great idea, or I think it's a great idea, but like I'm not confident enough, or I'm too hypercritical of myself to just do the thing and then take the credit for, not to like overly take the credit, but to accept the credit for it.
Yeah.
So I'll seek to like pull someone in and be like, here, do this with me. That way, when the praise comes, it's like, oh, it was both of us.
Yeah.
When in reality, I planned this shit like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
You just want to share the resources, man.
Yeah, and
share the
I'm a
joy.
feast mindset guy,
Yeah.
but also to a fault sometimes where like I don't want the praise,
Yeah.
or I'm like embarrassed that I had a good idea.
And you nailed that. It happens all the time.
Yeah, everybody. I think a lot of guys
just
do it.
2 days ago, I gave this guy praise for he had like the flyest outfit in the whole space. You know, it was like this. I don't even know what it really was, but top and bottoms were pants. Top was like a sweater thing, and they were both the same color, both the same. It looked like a tracksuit type thing, you know. And I walked up to him and I was like, "Yo, dude, you got the best outfit in this whole space." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know about that." And I'm like, "No, you do. I know. That looks good."
Yeah,
and I walked
yeah.
away, and I realized, now that you're saying this, I realized I'm like, dude, I do the same thing. I try to just like not accept, but then there's other times where I'm like, "Thank you, appreciate that."
Yeah, so even just learning how to say thank you.
Yeah.
And like, of course, you're a person with good manners. You do say thank you, but saying thank you when it really matters, not just as a reflex, like someone handed me my order.
Yeah.
Like genuinely being in the moment.
Actually
Feeling
thanking them for the thing.
The exchange.
You know, so like I practice that too. I like to practice. I learned this from my wife actually, where she'll constantly compliment other women that she sees, like for their hair or their outfit or this thing that this work they just did, and so I'll see guys and I'll be like, dude, that's a sick hat. Just little stuff like that. Hey bro, those are sick dreads.
Yeah.
Oh man, thanks. Like, and it's funny how a lot of guys are like caught off guard.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like, oh, what?
Absolutely.
Like you like
In
that?
the robotic face.
Yeah,
Just
and it's
broke
like,
them
of
out
course,
the
bro,
face.
it's sick. Like,
Yeah.
you obviously put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah.
Right.
They
You know?
they don't want it to seem like they put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of, now that your hair's growing back out, do you think you'll be growing back out to donate one day?
I mean, I'm
2024?
going to donate hair for the rest of my life now. Like, yeah, if it gets to a point where I can cut it and donate, why would I not? I think back to all the haircuts that I had before. I would go in these kind of like 8-year bouts where I would cut it and then grow it out, cut it, grow it out. And the last one was before I moved down here. And I chopped it off and then ended up going to Vietnam for like 2 months. And it was like, man, I could have donated that hair. Like,
Yeah.
what?
So is it safe to say you'll be joining us in 2024 for the Great Cut?
I believe so. Hopefully I'll have enough. I don't know if I'm going to start growing it out right now. I think I'm going to get it trimmed and still keep
pressure.
still keep it. But for sure, any time that I do a decent cut of hair now, it's going to be
Right
donation.
on.
2024, man.
Minimum donation. Yeah, minimum donation is 8 inches.
Okay.
Ideally, they want 12.
Okay.
But the Great Cut, I was not present for the last one, but the Great Cut, correct me if I'm wrong, has performances, singers. I think the Shocker
sweet,
did
yeah.
Magic last time.
That's right.
Oh,
So that'd be sick if there was a BMX show.
Dude.
You know,
And I know
Bring all
some
the homies.
long-haired BMXers.
Bring out the
Shout out to
homies.
Joss too. If it weren't for you, Joss is now.
That
with
would
the
be
crew now.
rad.
that'd be
Longhairs.
pretty badass.
Yeah,
just
that's
standing in line waiting to get your haircut, and you see some cool stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Some cool stuff happening. Yeah.
We could jump over the barber chair.
Yeah.
Oh, see? Creativity and authenticity, guys. That's the core value here.
Hell yeah.
That would be
How are
How are we
great.
doing on time?
We're doing pretty good, but I think you got any more questions? You got anything else?
No, we should end it strong, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I like
Good
to
combo.
send some sort of message to people watching, just a takeaway. I know there's a lot of takeaways in this one.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, you just got through, not just, but you recently got through a very trying time. A lot of scary, like your health, your identity is at risk here, So there's obviously someone out there also dealing with a similar situation, and how would you get them through that?
I would say really trust your instincts
Okay.
and try to listen to yourself more.
Nice.
And it does not hurt to ask questions. I was very embarrassed about the fact that I couldn't control my bowels to a certain level.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned it to a couple people in confidence, and before it was on a different podcast and was out about it. And I had messages from people that they knew, and they basically were like, go get yourself some Depends diapers. And I was like, just did. Like already purchased, and I'm embarrassed to admit it. But at that stage, I needed it, you know, and the person who I was riding with, they needed it too. They had already gone through it. Yeah. They said average about 3.5 months is how long it took them to fully recover. And they were like, I shit my bed, I shit my pants, I shit in everything that I owned. And I got tired of that. So I bought diapers for a small window of time. Things started to heal. The inflammation went down. Everything was okay. Now they're good. And then they donated the rest of the diapers to like a senior home, you know, and that's what I ended up doing. I didn't post this because I was like, whatever. But I have a little video of myself riding with a backpack full of Depends diapers, and I'm riding my way to a senior center to go donate the rest of them.
That's beautiful,
and I'm so grateful that I'm donating them because I don't need them anymore.
Right.
And I want to give them to someone who can instead of just throwing them away.
Yeah. So definitely, you know, don't be afraid. Just humble yourself. Hey, look, this is obviously not a place you want to be in, but
don't be afraid to just ask and try to communicate, you know, and don't be afraid of what your instincts might be screaming at you. Even though it sucks to hear it, I don't know who you got to talk to your best friend, call up a BetterHelp therapist or something, you know, try to find someone to talk to, but just listen to yourself. And if you don't understand it, ask people, communicate with people. You'll be blown away by how receptive people are by your vulnerability.
I'm wondering if
that's big, man.
Wondering if Depends would be open to a sponsorship. I mean, BMX is huge.
Hopefully not. Maybe for like the old guys of BMX after you've lost all your control. You know, I know they wanted me to give the handles out or whatever. My Instagram.
Where can they find you?
It's Ratty Ratty, and then Maty Maty. 1 T in Maty. It's weirdly specific, but hey, it is what it is. Reach out to there, type that in. You can find me on most everything. Not on TikTok. I dropped off of TikTok, but who knows? Maybe I'll be back one of these days.
TikTok, don't stop.
You put out a video not long ago. Where can people watch that?
Oh, the No Bad Thoughts edit.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's on the Our BMX YouTube. If you just type in Ratty Maty No Bad Thoughts, it'll pop up on YouTube.
Okay. We'll make sure the link goes on to
it. You'll be able to see it.
Podcast.
If you haven't watched this video, it is so sick, and also your palms will be sweaty. Your booty hole is gonna pucker.
Mine are sweating again with just thinking about
that video.
And that was one of the things I was really grateful for. Was in certain edits, you can kind of just film forever.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't like a specific concept in mind or anything like that. It was like, let's just do big stuff. And we were still actively filming. The day that I went to the hospital, I saw him, and he was like, he called me. He's like, yo, I see your van. What's up, dude? Like, hey, you want to ride this weekend? And I'm like, honestly, I feel super weird. So I don't know if I'm going to be riding. Let me just touch base with you. And sure enough, ended up going to the hospital, having that issue. And I told him, I said, hey, I don't know when I'm going to be able to ride again. And he was like, you want me to wrap the edit up? And I go, yes, please. So we had other plans to do other things, but it worked out how it was. And he popped that thing out super fast after my diagnosis. I think it went out in like a month after I was diagnosed. So I was super grateful for him for busting his butt. Yeah. Ryan Fudger, thank you so much.
My favorite part of that was when you were on a roof and then you spun and then you landed and you missed this post by like a millimeter.
Yeah, I actually didn't miss it once. I hit it every single time.
Really?
Yeah, every single time I hit it. But people don't realize where I hit it. I hit it with the right side of my pedal. So like if my feet are on my pedals, like this is my pedal. I'm assuming that camera's on me.
Sure.
This is my pedal. My feet are like here. So there's a little bit of the platform that kind of hangs out. And the hard part of that maneuver. So essentially what it is was I started on both tires. The roof itself, 3 inches wide. Like the edge that I had to be on, it was a single ply roof. So it was a 3-inch wide thing and then had like a little tiny embankment down to the actual part of the roof.
Yeah.
So I had to balance myself, get my cranks ready. And then right as I put my foot on, I'm ready to do it. But I do this really big yank. So I always yank too much. And when I'm that high up, I end up traveling a lot more than I'm going to realize. So the first one, if you watch the video, the first one, I laugh because I'm like shocked that I didn't hit the pole. But as I'm coming around and looking down, all I see is the pole in my sight. I'm like, I'm hitting the pole. I'm hitting the pole. And thankfully I missed it. My elbow could have smashed it.
Or
but
you could have pulverized like your femur or something.
Yeah,
dude.
but I bent one of the pedals, and then ended up putting on different pedals and pulling it. So like, it was to the point where it wasn't pulled perfectly, but Gary Young was there, and I was like, Gary, what do you think? And he was like, you rode away, like you did it, and I kind of think that's a little crazier because it shows how wild that is.
Yeah,
it's different when someone pulls everything perfect. And so what I ended up having to do was I had to scoot back on the roof closer to, if you look down on my right side, there's one of the poles. And the pole that's next to it, that's the one I'm constantly bumping into. So I had to back up more. And it was such a mental game to be standing up there, looking down, knowing that it looks like if I do it now, I'm going to skewer myself, but knowing that the distance I'm going to travel, if I just keep doing the same movements, will put me in the right space.
And that's that confidence.
And it took me 7 tries.
Damn,
I did that.
dude.
I did that 6 times and then ended up pulling it.
You guys are not the only ones that are gonna watch this. I gotta watch it. It sounds so gnarly.
Yeah, go check it out, please. No bad thoughts, right?
No bad thoughts. Yeah.
And on that note, this was a perfect landing as well. We thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.